I never thought I'd be the one sitting here telling this story. But when your entire family looks you in the eye and tells you that you're worthless compared to your golden child sister, some things just need to be said out loud. Growing up in our sprawling Tudor home in Connecticut, Olivia and I were raised to believe in family loyalty above all else. My father built his real estate development company from nothing, working 16-hour days while my mother managed the social connections that kept us firmly established in the upper echelons of New England society. We weren't just wealthy, we were dynasty wealthy, the kind where college tuition was never discussed, where summer homes were purchased on whims, and where family trips meant private jets and exclusive resorts. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Naomi Rodriguez, and I'm the forgotten daughter. The one who was told that hard work and independence were virtues, while my sister Olivia was simultaneously being handed everything on a silver platter. Don't get me wrong, growing up I never felt deprived. I attended the same prestigious private school as my sister. I had the same access to piano lessons, horseback riding, and tennis coaches. We both drove luxury cars to high school. From the outside looking in, we were equally privileged daughters of an extremely successful family. The differences were subtle at first. When Olivia needed help with her science fair project, Dad canceled meetings to assist her. When I asked for the same, I got a lecture about self-sufficiency. When Olivia wanted to attend an expensive summer program abroad, checks were written without question. When I found a similar opportunity, I was told to find scholarships and learn the value of earning things myself. I chalked it up to birth, order. Olivia was 4 years older, so naturally, they'd established different patterns with her. Or maybe it was our personalities. She gravitated toward business and finance like Dad, while I pursued creative writing and psychology. Whatever the reason, I pushed down the feelings of inequality and focused on making my own way. College changed everything. Olivia attended Dad's alma mater, an Ivy League university where she majored in business. I chose a well-respected state school with an excellent writing program. Both our educations were funded by our parents, though Olivia's came with an apartment in the city, while I was encouraged to experience authentic college life in the dorms. After graduation, Olivia was immediately given a vice president position at Dad's company, despite having zero actual work experience. I took an entry-level position at a publishing house in Boston, making barely enough to afford my tiny apartment with 2 roommates. Still, I was proud of myself. I was building something on my own terms, without family connections. You've always been so independent, Naomi, Mom would say during our monthly calls, as if my struggle to pay rent was some kind of charming personality quirk rather than an actual hardship compared to my sister's cushy existence. Things continued this way for several years. Olivia climbed the ranks at Dad's company, eventually becoming COO. She married Bradley, the son of one of Dad's golf buddies, in a wedding that cost more than most people's houses. I dated regular guys, none of whom were quite suitable in my parents' eyes, though they never said it directly. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Naomi, your father and I need to discuss something important with you. Can you come to the house this weekend? My mother's voice was tense, formal in a way that immediately put me on edge. I made the 3-hour drive from Boston, anxiety building with every mile. When I arrived, I found not just my parents waiting, but Olivia and Bradley too, seated in the formal living room we only used for important family discussions or entertaining important guests. "What's going on?" I asked, taking a seat on the edge of the sofa. "Is everyone okay?" Dad cleared his throat, straightening his posture the way he did when preparing to close an important business deal. "We've been doing some estate planning, and we wanted to be transparent about our decisions." My mother nodded, her perfectly manicured hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Your father and I have worked very hard to build what we have, and we want to ensure that our legacy continues in the right way. I nodded, unsure where this was heading but feeling increasingly uneasy. We've decided to transfer the majority of our assets to Olivia, effective immediately, Dad continued. The company, of course, but also the bulk of our investment portfolio and real estate holdings. The room seemed to tilt beneath me. I'm sorry, what? Approximately $8 million in assets, Dad clarified, as if the exact figure was what I was confused about. Olivia has proven herself capable of managing and growing the family business. She understands responsibility and has shown real business acumen. I looked at Olivia, who at least had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, though she remained silent. And me? I finally managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. My mother reached over to pat my hand. Darling, you've always valued your independence. You've made it very clear you wanted to make your own way in the world, and we respect that. We've set aside a small trust that will provide you with modest annual payments, Dad added. Enough. To help if you ever face true hardship, but not enough to make you— He paused, searching for the right word. Dependent, my mother finished for him. How much? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dad had the audacity to look annoyed at the direct question about money. 100,000, with conservative management. It should generate about 5,000 a year. I did the math quickly. 8 million versus 100,000. My sister was receiving 80 times what I was getting. This isn't fair, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. I never said I wanted to be cut out of the family. Nobody's cutting you out, Dad said sharply. But you need to stop expecting handouts, Naomi. Olivia works for this family every day. What do you contribute? His words cut through me like a knife. I didn't realize my worth as your daughter was measured by my contribution to the family. Business. That's not what your father meant, Mom interjected quickly. Isn't it, though? I looked around the room, at these people who were supposedly my family. All these years, I thought you were proud of me for forging my own path, for following my passion, for not asking for special treatment, but really, you were just building a case against me. Bradley shifted uncomfortably. Olivia stared at her. Hands. Don't be dramatic, Dad said dismissively. This is a business decision. We're supposed to be a family, not a business, I replied, tears threatening to spill over. Family is about more than money, Mom said softly. You'll always be our daughter. I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. Easy to say when you're not the one being disinherited. You're not being disinherited, Dad insisted. You're getting a trust fund, for God's sake. Do you know how many people would kill for that kind of safety net? I stood up, unable to sit there any longer. A safety net that's a fraction of a percent of what you're giving Olivia. Don't pretend this is about anything other than favoritism. It's about capability and commitment, Dad shot back, his face reddening. If you had ever shown any interest in the family business. So that's the price of being valued in this family? Working for you? Following the path you laid out? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That's enough, Mom interjected, standing up as well. We didn't call you here to argue. The decisions have been made, the paperwork is done. We're simply informing you as a courtesy. A courtesy. As if tossing me aside like yesterday's garbage was somehow polite because they told me to my face. Looked at Olivia, who had remained suspiciously quiet throughout the entire exchange. Do you have nothing to say about this? She finally lifted her gaze to meet mine. I tried to talk them into a more equitable split, Naomi. But ultimately, it's their money, their choice. How convenient for you that their choice benefits you to the tune of $8 million, I said bitterly. I've worked alongside Dad for 10 years, she replied, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. I've earned his trust. And I haven't. Because I chose a different career? No one answered. The silence in the room was deafening. I need some air, I said finally, turning toward the door. Naomi, don't leave like this, Mom called after me. I paused at the doorway, not turning around. You know what hurts the most? It's not even about the money. It's finding out that my value in this family has always been conditional. That all your talk about being proud of my independence was just a convenient excuse to justify treating me as less than. I walked out of that house feeling like the ground beneath my feet had disappeared. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about my place in the world, had been turned upside down in a single afternoon. The drive back to Boston was a blur of tears and rage, punctuated by unanswered calls from my mother. For 3 days, I didn't speak to any of them. I called in sick to work and lay in bed, replaying every childhood memory, every family dinner, every holiday, searching for the signs I had missed. Had they always loved Olivia more? Had I been fooling myself all these years? On the 4th day, I woke up to a text from Olivia. We need to talk. I'm in Boston for meetings. Lunch today? I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. What could she possibly have to say that would make any of this better? Met at an upscale restaurant downtown. Her choice, naturally. She was already seated when I arrived, looking every bit the successful executive in her tailored suit, not a hair out of place despite the drizzling rain outside. Thank you for coming, she said as I slid into the seat across from her. What do you want, Olivia? I asked, too emotionally exhausted for pleasantries. She sighed, folding her hands on the table. I want to explain something about Mom and Dad's decision. What's to explain? They've made it pretty clear where I stand. It's not that simple, she insisted. There are things you don't know. I raised an eyebrow, waiting. The company is in trouble, Naomi. Serious trouble. This was not at all what I had expected to hear. What are you talking about? Dad's business has been successful for decades. She shook her head. It was, until about 3 years ago. Dad made some high-risk investments that didn't pan out. Then, the market crashed, and we lost several major clients. We've been operating in the red for months. I stared at her, trying to process this information. Why didn't anyone tell me? Would you have been able to help? She asked, not unkindly. You've built your own life, far from the business. That doesn't mean I don't deserve to know when. My family is struggling, I shot back. She nodded, conceding the point. You're right, but Dad's pride? You know how he is. He didn't want anyone to know, not even Mom at first. So what does this have to do with giving you everything? Olivia took a deep breath. The transfer of assets. It's not really about favoring me. It's about protecting the family wealth from potential creditors. If the business fails completely, which it might, putting everything in my name creates a firewall. The small trust they set up for you? It's actually protected in a way that the rest isn't. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Again. So they're using you as a shield? And keeping me in the dark about all of it? They're trying to save everything they've built, she said defensively. And yes, they should have told you the truth, instead of making it seem like they were just playing favorites. But Dad thought it would be easier this way. Easier for whom? Not for me. Being told I'm essentially worthless to this family. You're not worthless, Olivia insisted. That's not what this is about. Then what is it about? Because from where? I'm sitting. They've made it pretty clear that you're the only child worth investing in. Olivia's expression hardened slightly. You know, you've always had this chip on your shoulder. Always so quick to assume you're being victimized. Did it ever occur to you that maybe, just maybe, there are things happening that aren't about you at all? Her words stung because there was a grain of truth in them. Had I been too quick to assume the worst? Too ready to believe they loved me less? But then I remembered the look on my father's face as he told me to stop expecting handouts, the dismissive way he had questioned what I contributed to the family. Even if what you're saying is true, I said slowly, it doesn't excuse how they handled this. They could have told me the truth. They could have treated me like an equal member of this family instead of an afterthought. You're right, Olivia admitted, surprising me. They handled it badly. But Naomi, if the company goes under, if we lose everything, that little trust fund they set up for you might be the only family money left. They were trying to protect you in their own misguided way. I sat back in my chair, trying to absorb this new perspective. Could it be true? Was this whole painful episode actually an attempt to shield me from financial disaster? As I looked across, the table at my sister, the sister who had seemingly been given everything while I got crumbs, I realized there was more to this story than I had initially understood. But one question still burned in my mind. If this is true, why didn't you say anything during that meeting? Why let me believe I was being cast aside? Olivia's eyes dropped to the table. Because Dad made me promise not to tell you about the company's troubles. He's still hoping to turn things around before anyone outside the inner circle finds out. And I'm not inner circle, I said flatly. You chose to build a life away from all this, she reminded me. Which, honestly, might turn out to be the smartest decision either of us ever made. The waiter approached to take our orders, but I suddenly had no appetite. As he walked away, I fixed my gaze on my sister. I need to know everything, Olivia. The whole truth. No more family secrets. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, but not here. Come back to my hotel after lunch. There's something I need to show you. As we picked at our food, making stilted small talk about safer topics, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever Olivia was about to reveal would change everything I thought I knew about our family forever, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. I followed Olivia to her hotel after our uncomfortable lunch, my mind racing with possibilities. What could she possibly need to show me that required this level of privacy? Part of me was afraid to find out. The Ritz-Carlton doorman greeted her by name as we entered. Of course he did. We rode the elevator in silence to the top floor, where she led me to a corner suite with sweeping views of the Boston skyline. Nice digs for a company that's supposedly failing, I remarked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Olivia set her designer bag on a marble-topped desk. Appearances matter in this business. The day we start downgrading is the day the sharks start circling. She pulled out her laptop and motioned for me to join her on the plush sofa. As she typed in her password, I noticed her hands trembling slightly. Before I show you this, she said, hesitating with her finger over the touchpad, you need to understand something. Dad doesn't know I'm doing this. If he finds out I've shown you these documents, there will be hell to pay. Why the secrecy? I'm family too. Because he's ashamed, Naomi. The great Richard Rodriguez, brought to his knees by his own miscalculations. She shook her head. His pride is the one thing he has left. She turned the screen toward me, opening a folder labeled Financial Disclosures 2024-2025. Inside were dozens of spreadsheets, legal documents, and email exchanges. She clicked on one titled Consolidated Assessment. I'm not a financial wizard, but even I could understand the bleak picture painted by those numbers. Assets that had once totaled well over $30 million had dwindled to less than a third of that. Debt had skyrocketed. The projected earnings showed a company in free fall. How did this happen? I whispered, genuinely shocked. Dad bet. Big on a development project in Arizona. Luxury condos in the desert, pitched as the next Scottsdale. But the location was wrong, the timing was worse, and then interest rates doubled. She clicked through several damning projections. He sank nearly everything into it, convinced he could turn it around through sheer force of will. That doesn't sound like Dad. He's always been so careful, so strategic. Olivia's laugh was brittle. People change when they get older. He became fixated on creating a legacy that would overshadow anything his competitors had built. His judgment, it hasn't been the same. I stared at the screen, trying to reconcile this information with the image I'd always had of my father. Infallible, calculating, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. So, the asset transfer to you is partly about protecting what's left. From creditors, yes. But that's not all. She clicked on another document, this one a medical report. Dad didn't want you to know this either. My heart dropped as I read the neurologist's assessment. Early signs of cognitive decline. Recommended follow-up testing. Medications prescribed. He's sick? My voice cracked. It's early stages, but yes. The doctors think the stress of the financial situation has accelerated things. He's having good days and bad days. She closed the laptop gently. The company isn't just failing financially, Naomi. Its leader is failing too. I sat back, feeling like the wind had been knocked out of me. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because Dad didn't want you to see him this way. And because... She hesitated. Because... What? Because he was afraid you'd think he was making excuses for cutting you out. He wanted you to be angry rather than pitying him. I thought about my father, always so proud, so imposing. The idea that he would prefer my anger to my sympathy was sadly believable. Mom knows? Olivia nodded. She's been managing it at home while I handle the business side. It's why she seems so distant lately. She's exhausted. And the trust fund they set up for me? Is genuine. It's small because it's all they could salvage that's completely protected from what's coming. The money they transferred to me... She paused, meeting my eyes directly. Most of it is already gone, Naomi. It exists on paper for now, but when the company fails, when the lawsuits start... You're the sacrificial lamb, I realized. They've put everything in your name, so you'll be the one dealing with the fallout. Something shifted in her expression, a flash of vulnerability I rarely saw in my poised, perfect sister. I agreed to it, for the family. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I slumped back against the sofa cushions, trying to process everything. My entire understanding of my family situation had been upended twice in the span of a week. First, I thought my parents had blatantly favored my sister with an obscene financial gift. Now I was learning that the gift was actually a burden, that my father was ill, and that the modest trust they'd established for me might be the only thing that survived this impending disaster. So what happens now? I finally asked. Olivia closed her laptop. Now I try to salvage what I can of the business, sell off assets before they're seized, negotiate with creditors, protect the family name as much as possible. And Dad? Continues treatment, takes medication, steps back from day-to-day operations while maintaining the appearance of being in charge. This is... I struggled to find the words. This is a lot to handle alone, Olivia. I'm not completely alone. Bradley's father has connections that might help, and Mom is handling the social side, making sure no one suspects anything is wrong. What about me? I asked. What can I do? She looked surprised by the question. You want to help? Of course I want to help. They're my parents too. Olivia studied me for a moment, then reached for her bag. She pulled out a thick manila envelope and handed it to me. What's this? Dad's memoirs. He's been working on them for years. The publisher is expecting a completed manuscript in 3 months, with a substantial advance already paid. But with everything going on, I opened the envelope, finding hundreds of pages of notes, partial chapters, and outlines. You want me to finish his book? You're the writer in the family, and this advance could help cover his medical expenses for another year. I leafed through the pages, recognizing my father's bold handwriting, seeing glimpses of stories I'd never heard before about his childhood, his early business ventures. "He'll never agree to this," I said. "You know how particular he is about his legacy." "He doesn't have to know, not until it's done. We can tell him his assistant is transcribing his notes. By the time he realizes what's happened, the book will be finished." "You want me to ghostwrite my father's memoirs without his knowledge or consent?" The absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on me. "That's actually kind of devious, Olivia." Hint of a smile crossed her face, something I hadn't seen since this whole ordeal began. "I learned from the best. Dad always said to use every resource available. And I'm a resource now?" "Your family," she corrected. "And we need you." Those 4 words, "and we need you," hit me harder than I expected. After years of feeling peripheral to the family's core, here was my sister explicitly acknowledging my value. "I'll think about it," I said, not ready to commit either way. Olivia nodded, understanding my hesitation. "That's fair, but don't think too long. The clock is ticking on a lot of fronts." As I gathered my things to leave, a question that had been nagging at me finally bubbled to the surface. "One thing I don't understand. If things are this bad, why did Dad make that whole speech about me expecting handouts? Why frame it as me being less deserving than you?" Olivia sighed. "Because he's still Dad, Naomi. Proud to a fault. Admitting the truth would mean admitting failure, and that's something he's never been able to do." She paused. "And maybe, in some twisted way, he thought he was protecting you from what's coming by pushing you away." I shook my head, unconvinced. "That's pretty messed up." "The whole situation is messed up," she agreed. "But we can't change how we got here. We can only decide where we go from here." As I left the hotel, my mind was spinning with everything I'd learned. The memoirs weighed heavily in my bag, literally and figuratively. Taking this on would mean diving back into the family dynamics I'd spent years distancing myself from. It would mean helping the very people who had hurt me so deeply just days ago. But it would also mean helping my father preserve something of himself as his mind began to betray him. It would mean easing my mother's burden. And yes, it would mean supporting Olivia as she shouldered responsibilities that should never have been hers alone. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe. To our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I called in sick to work the next day, spreading my father's notes across my tiny apartment living room. Hour after hour, I sifted through fragments of his life. Some I recognized from family stories, others completely new to me. There was a vulnerability in these pages I'd never seen in the man himself. Stories of his immigrant parents' struggles, his own failures before success, moments of doubt I couldn't imagine my confident father experiencing. Around midnight, my phone rang. Olivia. "Did I wake you?" she asked. "No, I'm still up," I said, surrounded by stacks of paper. "Actually going through Dad's notes." "So you're doing it?" I could hear the relief in her voice. "I haven't decided yet," I hedged. "Just exploring the possibility." "Well, while you're exploring, there's something else you should know." Her tone had shifted, becoming more businesslike. "I've been going through the company books in detail, and some things aren't adding up." I sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" "There are transfers to accounts I can't identify. Large sums moving in patterns that don't make sense for our normal operations. Could it be related to Dad's condition? Maybe he's making mistakes?" That's what I thought at first. But these are too systematic, too careful. "Naomi, I think someone might be embezzling from the company." My blood ran cold. "Who would have that kind of access?" "That's the thing. It's a very short list. Dad, me, our CFO Martin, and—" She hesitated. "And?" "Bradley. My sister's husband. the golden boy who had seamlessly joined our family power structure. "Olivia, are you saying you think your husband might be stealing from the company?" "I don't know what I'm saying yet," she replied, her voice tight. "I need to investigate further before making accusations. But I wanted you to know what we might be dealing with." "Does Dad suspect anything?" "On his good days, maybe. He's mentioned feeling that something's off, but he can't quite place it. On his bad days, he wouldn't notice if the entire building disappeared." I ran a hand through my hair, overwhelmed by this new complication. So now we might be dealing with not just a failing company and Dad's health issues, but potential criminal activity? "Welcome to the family business," Olivia said dryly. After we hung up, I couldn't focus on the memoir notes anymore. If someone close to the family was actively undermining the company, that changed everything. It wasn't just about weathering a storm of bad investments and health challenges. It was about identifying a traitor in our midst. I pulled out my laptop and began researching financial fraud, embezzlement patterns, and ways to trace suspicious transactions. My psychology background wasn't directly applicable, but understanding human motivation might help identify who would do this and why. The next morning, I called my boss at the publishing house. "I need to take a leave of absence," I said. "Family emergency." 2 hours later, I was on the road back to Connecticut, my car packed with everything I might need for an extended stay. I'd made my decision. Whether I was walking into a family drama, a financial crime scene, or both, I couldn't stay on the sidelines anymore. The family estate looked the same as it always had. Imposing, perfectly maintained, a monument to success. But now I knew it was built on crumbling foundations. My mother answered the door, surprise evident on her face. "Naomi? We weren't expecting you." "I know," I said, wheeling my suitcase past her into the foyer. "But it seems like there's a lot going on that I should have been told about sooner. I'm here to help." "Help with what, exactly?" My father's voice came from his study doorway. He looked smaller somehow, less commanding than I remembered from just a week ago. Now that I knew what to look for, I could see the signs. The slight tremor in his hand, the momentary confusion in his eyes before recognition set in. "Everything," I said simply. "The company, your book, whatever needs doing." He stiffened. "Olivia told you. Olivia told you." "Yes, and it's a good thing she did." I met his gaze steadily. "You don't have to face this alone, Dad. Any of it." For a moment, I thought he might order me to leave. The muscle working in his jaw telegraphed his internal struggle. Pride versus necessity. Independence versus need. "The book," he finally said. "Olivia mentioned you might be able to help with the book." It wasn't an acceptance of all the help I was offering, but it was a start. "I'll need access to your files, and time to interview you while you're—" I stopped, unsure how to delicately reference his condition. "While I still remember my own life story," he finished, a flash of his old sardonic humor surfacing. "Yes. I suppose time is of the essence there." My mother hovered nervously nearby. "I'll make up your old room, Naomi. Will you be staying long?" "As long as it takes," I replied, not entirely sure what it encompassed anymore. Finishing the memoir, uncovering the potential embezzlement, reconciling with my family, or all of the above. As I carried my bags upstairs to my childhood bedroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into something far more complicated than I'd initially understood. This wasn't just about money anymore, or even about family dynamics. There were layers of deception here that we were only beginning to uncover. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Bradley's coming home early. He knows something's up. Be careful what you say around him until we know more." I set my bag down on my old bed, looking around at the remnants of my younger self. Debate trophies, framed posters of literary heroes, photos from high school graduation. Everything seemed so simple then, black and white, right and wrong. Now, I was wading into murky waters where family loyalty, financial survival, and possibly criminal activity all swirled together. And somewhere in this mess was the truth about why my parents had really set up our inheritances the way they did. Unpacked quickly, changing into more comfortable clothes before heading back downstairs. I needed to start with what I knew I could handle, Dad's memoir. It would give me legitimate reason to ask questions, dig through family history, and spend time with my father while he was still lucid enough to fill in the blanks. The embezzlement. Investigation would have to happen in parallel, quietly, with Olivia's help. If Bradley was indeed the culprit, we'd need solid evidence before making any accusations. And we'd need to be extremely careful about how we gathered that evidence. As I descended the grand staircase, I heard voices from my father's study, raised, argumentative. I slowed my pace, listening. "You had no right to bring her into this," my father was saying. "We agreed to keep Naomi out of it." "Things have changed," Olivia responded firmly. "We need her. She has skills we don't." "She's not equipped for this kind of situation. You've put her at risk unnecessarily." "At risk?" Olivia's voice rose incredulously. "The only one putting anyone at risk is—" She stopped abruptly as I pushed open the partially closed door. Both of them turned to look at me, their expressions a mixture of frustration and guilt. "Don't stop on my account," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "I'd love to hear who exactly is putting me at risk, and how." The silence that followed was deafening. My father and sister exchanged a loaded glance that told me there was yet another layer to this situation that they hadn't revealed. "Well?" I prompted. "I thought we were done with the secrets." My father sank into his leather chair, suddenly looking every one of his 68 years. "There are things you don't understand, Naomi." "Then help me understand them," I challenged. "Because I'm here now, I'm involved, and I'm not going anywhere until we sort this out. All of it." Olivia walked to the window, her back to us both. "Tell her, Dad. Tell her everything." He shook his head, a mixture of resignation and something else, fear perhaps, crossing his face. "It's not that simple." "It never is with this family," I said, "but I think I've earned the right to the whole truth." My father reached for a crystal tumbler on his desk, his hand trembling slightly as he poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. After taking a long sip, he finally met my eyes. "You think this is about money?" he said. "About the company failing, about my health. But there's more at stake than you realize." He set the glass down deliberately. "What I'm about to tell you puts you in danger simply by knowing it. Are you sure you want that responsibility?" A chill ran down my spine as I realized we had moved beyond family drama and financial troubles into something potentially much darker. "I'm sure," I said, though my voice betrayed my uncertainty. Dad nodded slowly. "Then close the door and sit down. This is going to take a while." As I pushed the heavy door shut, I caught a glimpse of movement in the hallway. Bradley, my brother-in-law, standing perfectly still, listening to every word. I sat across from my father in his study, the heavy door now closed, sealing us in with whatever terrible secret he was about to reveal. Olivia had moved to stand beside his desk, her expression grave. The tension in the room was palpable. "What I'm about to tell you goes back 20 years, my father began, his voice lower than usual. "Before you were old enough to understand the realities of the business world." I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "The Rodriguez Development Company wasn't always what it is today. In the beginning, we were struggling, close to bankruptcy more than once." He took another sip of scotch. "Then an opportunity came along that changed everything. A major waterfront development project that would put us on the map." "The Harbor Point project," I said, remembering the development that had indeed launched our family into the upper echelons of wealth. "Yes, but what no one outside a very small circle knows is how we secured that contract." He hesitated, glancing at Olivia. We weren't the most qualified bidder, not even close. Then how? Because I had leverage, he interrupted. Damning. Information about the chairman of the selection committee. Information that would have destroyed his career, his marriage, everything. My stomach dropped. You blackmailed him? Dad flinched at the word. I prefer to think of it as aggressive negotiation, but yes, essentially. Jesus, Dad. It was a different time, Naomi. I had a family to provide for, a company to save. That doesn't make it right, I said, struggling to reconcile this information with the ethical businessman I thought I knew. No, it doesn't, he agreed, surprising me. But it's what happened, and it worked. Harbor Point was just the beginning. Once we had that credibility, legitimate opportunities followed. I told myself the end justified the means. So what does this have to do with what's happening now? I asked, trying to connect these past sins to our current crisis. Olivia spoke. The man Dad blackmailed? His name was Edward Lansing. The name was vaguely familiar. The former state senator? The same, my father confirmed. He lost his position in a corruption scandal several years later, unrelated to ours arrangement. But he never forgot what I did to him. He's been waiting for an opportunity to return the favor. And now he has one, Olivia added. He's the majority investor behind the shell company that's acquired most of our debt. The pieces started falling into place. So, this isn't just a business failure. It's revenge. Lansing doesn't just want the company to fail, Dad said, his voice hollow. He wants to destroy our family completely, financially, legally, personally. The E's are cognitive issues? I asked, dreading the answer. Are real, Olivia assured me, but possibly exacerbated by stress and sleep deprivation. Dad's been fighting this battle silently for months. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. So let me get this straight. You blackmailed a man 20 years ago to secure a contract. That man is now orchestrating your financial downfall. And you decided the best response was to… what? Transfer everything to Olivia and push me away? How does that solve anything? It doesn't solve anything, my father admitted. But it might protect you, both of you, in different ways. Explain. The asset transfer to Olivia wasn't just about creditor protection. It was about creating a legal firewall between my past actions and your futures. When Lansing makes his move, he'll come after me personally. The less connected you are to my finances, the safer you'll be. And me? I asked. Why cut me out so completely? My father's eyes met mine, surprisingly sincere. Because you've built something for yourself outside of all this. Something genuine, earned. If your name isn't connected to the family assets, if you appear estranged from us, Lansing has no reason to target you. You were trying to protect me by pushing me away, I said, the realization dawning. By making it look like we had a falling out. It wasn't just for show, Olivia interjected. Dad really does struggle with the path you've chosen. But yes, the timing and severity of that confrontation was strategic. I looked between them, these people I'd grown up with but apparently never truly known. And the embezzlement? How? Does that fit in? My father's expression darkened. That we didn't anticipate. Someone is indeed siphoning funds, accelerating our downfall. We suspect it's… A knock at the door interrupted him. Without waiting for a response, Bradley pushed it open, his handsome face arranged in a mask of concern. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation with the Westfield project, he said, addressing my father but scanning the room, clearly gauging how much we might have discussed. I watched him carefully, noting the tension in his shoulders, the too casual way he leaned against the doorframe. If he had been listening outside, he now knew we were onto him. Can it wait? My father asked sharply. I'm afraid not. The investors are threatening to pull out if we don't address their concerns immediately. Olivia straightened. I'll handle it. Actually, Bradley said smoothly, They specifically asked for Richard. Something about wanting reassurance from the man in charge. A test, I realized. They were testing to see if my father was still running the company or if his health issues had sidelined him. Dad stood, steadier than I expected. Fine. Set up the call in the conference room. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Bradley nodded, his eyes lingering on me for a beat too long before he left, closing the door behind him. He knows, I said quietly. He was listening outside the door earlier. Olivia's face paled. Are you sure? Positive. I saw him in the hallway just as I was closing the door. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My father and sister exchanged alarmed glances. This changed everything. We need to move fast, Dad said, suddenly energized by the immediate threat. Olivia, secure the financial records. All of them. Change the access codes. Naomi, I need you to do something that might seem strange. What is it? Call Edward Lansing. Tell him you want to meet. What? Olivia and I exclaimed simultaneously. Lansing. Doesn't know you, Naomi. You're the unknown variable in his plan. And right now, we need to buy time. He scribbled a number on a piece of paper and handed it to me. Tell him you've just learned about the situation and want to discuss a possible resolution, independent of the family. You want me to pretend I'm turning against you? I asked, incredulous. I want you to make him believe you've always been against us, Dad corrected. That you resent the way we've treated you. That you might be willing to provide information that could help his cause. A double agent, I said, understanding dawning. You want me to spy on him? It's dangerous, Olivia warned. If he suspects you're playing him, it's our best chance, Dad insisted. While Lansing is distracted trying to determine if Naomi is a genuine asset, we can work on tracking the embezzlement and securing what's left of our resources. I stared at the phone number in my hand, feeling the weight of what they were asking me to do. This went far beyond helping with a memoir or even investigating financial discrepancies. They were asking me to put myself directly in the path of a man intent on destroying our family. I'll do it, I said finally. But I need to know everything. All the details of what you did to him. All the potential evidence he might have against you. Everything that might come up in conversation. Dad nodded gravely. Of course. And Naomi? He hesitated. If at any point you feel you're in danger, you walk away. Family legacy isn't worth your safety. It was perhaps the most fatherly thing he'd ever said to me. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Dad filled me in on the sordid details of his blackmail scheme, while Olivia worked frantically to lock Bradley out of the company's financial systems. We operated under the assumption that he could be watching or listening at any moment, so we communicated in hushed tones or through written notes that we immediately destroyed. Meanwhile, I crafted a carefully worded message to Edward Lansing, playing the role of the bitter, overlooked daughter seeking justice against her family. The response came faster than I expected. He wanted to meet the next day at his private club in the city. He took the bait, I told my father and sister as we reconvened in the guest house, which we determined was less likely to be monitored than the main house. But now we need a plan for what information I'll leak to him. Nothing that can cause immediate damage, Dad instructed, but enough to make him believe you're genuine. What about the medical reports? Olivia suggested. Lansing would be very interested to know about Dad's condition. It would confirm what he probably already suspects, that Dad isn't fully in control anymore. Good, Dad agreed. That's already documented, and it plays into Lansing's timeline. What else? What else? The Arizona development failure, I offered. Again, something he likely already knows about, but you can act like it's privileged information I'm sharing. We continued planning late into the night, constructing a narrative that would make me valuable to Lansing without giving him any new weapons to use against my family. As we worked, I noticed my father struggling to focus, his sentences sometimes trailing off mid-thought. The cognitive issues were real, and they were progressing. Around midnight, my mother appeared at the guest house door, looking worried. "Bradley's asking questions about why you're all out here," she said, "and he's been in Richard's office for the past hour." "Looking for evidence we're on to him," Olivia muttered. "Mom, where is he now?" "He said he was going to bed, but his car is still running in the driveway." The four of us exchanged alarmed glances. "He's leaving," Dad realized, "with whatever he came for." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Olivia was already moving toward the door. "I'll stop him." "Wait." I caught her arm. "Let him go." "Are you crazy? He's probably taking financial documents, access codes, all of which can be changed," I pointed out. "But if we confront him now, we lose the element of surprise. Let him think we're still in the dark about his involvement. It will make him careless." Dad nodded slowly. "Naomi's right. Besides, I have a strong suspicion about where, or rather who, he's running to." "Lansing," Olivia breathed. "You think they're working together?" "It would explain a lot," Dad acknowledged. "The timing of Bradley's courtship of you, his keen interest in the company's finances, the embezzlement patterns." I thought back to the wedding, how quickly Bradley had integrated himself into the family, how eager he'd been to learn about the business, how attentive he'd been to my father. We'd all interpreted it as ambition, as desire to please his new father-in-law. But what if it had been something darker? What if he'd been placed in our lives deliberately? "Olivia, I'm so sorry," Mom said, reaching for her daughter's hand. Olivia's expression was stone. "Don't be. If he's betrayed this family, he'll pay for it, just like any other enemy." The cold determination in her voice reminded me so much of our father that I nearly shivered. In that moment, I understood why she had been chosen to lead the company. She had the same steel in her spine, the same unflinching resolve. "This changes our approach," Dad said. "All business despite the late hour and the personal betrayal we were discussing. Naomi, your meeting with Lansing takes on even greater importance now. If Bradley reaches him first, Lansing will know we're aware of the embezzlement, but he won't know we suspect the larger conspiracy. So I play dumb about Bradley but hint at knowing about Lansing's vendetta?" I confirmed. "Exactly. Make him think you're feeding us misinformation about his involvement, that you're focused solely on the company's financial troubles and Dad's health." The next morning, I dressed carefully for my meeting with Lansing, choosing an outfit that projected both confidence and a hint of resentment. Dark colors, sharp lines, nothing that suggested family money or privilege. As I prepared to leave, Olivia pulled me aside. "Take this," she said, pressing a small device into my palm. "It looks like a normal key fob, but it's actually a recording device. Keep it in your pocket or purse. We need evidence of whatever Lansing might reveal." I nodded, tucking it securely away. "What about you? What will you be doing while I'm with Lansing?" "Following the money," she replied grimly. "Now that we know Bradley's involved, I can trace his movements through the company accounts. By the time you get back, I should have a complete picture of what's been taken and where it's gone." Edward Lansing's club was exactly what I expected. Old money, dark wood, the smell of cigars and privilege. A place where men like my father had once made deals that shaped the skyline of our city. Now it would be the backdrop for my performance as the family traitor. Lansing himself was older than I expected, well into his 70s with sharp eyes that belied his age. He rose when I was shown to his table, the gesture oddly gentlemanly given what I knew about his intentions toward my family. "Miss Rodriguez," he greeted me. "I must say, this meeting is rather unexpected." "For both of us, I imagine," I replied, coolly, taking the seat across from him. Thank you for agreeing to see me. How could I refuse such an intriguing request? He studied me carefully. Though I must admit, I'm curious about your sudden interest in your family's business affairs. From what I understand, you've kept your distance over the years. Circumstances change, I said. Perspectives evolve. Indeed they do. He signaled for the waiter. Drink? Just water, thank you. He ordered scotch for himself, the same brand my father favored, I noticed. A deliberate choice, no doubt. So, he said once the waiter had left, you claim to have information that might be of interest to me regarding your father's current difficulties. I have more than information, I countered. I have access and motivation. Motivation, he repeated, savoring the word. That's an interesting term. What exactly motivates you, Miss Rodriguez? Money, revenge, justice? Let's call it equity, I said. As in, the lack of it in how my family has treated me compared to my sister. Lansing's thin lips curved in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ah, yes, the golden child versus the forgotten one. A tale as old as time. You seem well informed about my family dynamics, I observed. I make it my business to know my business associates thoroughly. He sipped his scotch, including the fact that your father recently transferred the bulk of his assets to your sister while leaving you with comparative crumbs. So you understand my interest in speaking with you. What I don't understand, he said, leaning forward slightly, is why you think I have anything to do with your father's company at all. I'm simply a retired public servant enjoying my golden years. Please, Mr. Lansing, I said with a hint of impatience, let's not waste each other's time. I know about Harbor Point. I know what my father did to you 20 years ago. And I know you're behind the shell company that's acquired his debt. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that I knew so much. Or approval that I was direct. You seem to know a great many things, he said carefully. Though I wonder how many of them you can prove. Proof works both ways, Mr. Lansing. Whatever evidence you might have of my father's aggressive negotiation tactics has likely expired under the statute of limitations. But the court of public opinion has no such restrictions, does it? Studied me for a long moment. You're suggesting a mutual destruction scenario. I'm suggesting we could help each other, I corrected. My father is not well. His grip on the company is weakening. Olivia is scrambling to maintain control. There's vulnerability there, opportunity. For whom? For someone who understands the true value of information, I said meaningfully. My father kept me at arm's length from the business, but I'm closer than ever to the family now. Temporarily back home, helping my father with his memoirs. His memoirs? Lansing's interest visibly sharpened. How comprehensive are these memoirs? That depends on who's writing them, I said. Currently, that's me. The implication hung in the air between us. With my father's cognitive decline and my position as his ghostwriter, I could shape the narrative of his life, including his dealings with Lansing. I see, he said finally. And what exactly are you proposing, Miss Rodriguez? A collaboration of sorts. I can provide inside information about the company's vulnerabilities, my father's deteriorating condition, and my sister's desperate attempts to save what's left. In exchange, I paused deliberately. In exchange? When this is over, when you've achieved whatever justice you're seeking, I want what should have been mine all along. Not everything, just my fair share. And recognition of my value to the family legacy. Lansing sat back, his expression calculating. That's quite a betrayal you're contemplating. Are you certain you're prepared for the consequences? Families have a way of closing ranks when threatened. My family closed ranks long ago, I said with genuine bitterness. They just did it without me inside the circle. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it, his expression changing subtly, a tightening around the eyes, a slight tension in his jaw. "Excuse me a moment," he said, rising from the table and moving toward a quiet corner of the room. I knew without being told that the message was from Bradley. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. I watched Lansing's body language as he typed a response, rigid, focused, the movements of a man adjusting his strategy on the fly. When he returned to the table, his manner had shifted. More guarded, less indulgent of my presence. "I apologize, but something has come up that requires my immediate attention," he said. "We'll have to continue this conversation another time." "Of course," I said, rising as well. "But I would appreciate a response to my proposal sooner rather than later. My position as my father's confidant is time-sensitive, given his condition." "I understand completely," he assured me. "You'll hear from me very soon. Very soon." As I left the club, I knew my suspicions had been confirmed. Bradley had warned Lansing about our family's sudden closed-door meetings, about the possibility that we were onto the embezzlement scheme. Lansing would now be evaluating whether I was genuinely offering to betray my family, or whether I was playing a double game. What he didn't know was that I had recorded our entire conversation, capturing his implicit acknowledgement of his vendetta against my father. When I returned to the estate, I found my father, mother, and sister waiting anxiously in the guest house. "How did it go?" Dad asked immediately. "About as expected," I said, pulling out the recording device. "He was careful not to make any explicit admissions, but there's enough here to confirm he's behind the attacks on the company." "And Bradley?" Olivia asked, her voice tight with barely contained emotion. "Texted Lansing during our meeting." I couldn't see the message, but Lansing's demeanor changed immediately afterward. He cut our meeting short. "That confirms it," Dad said grimly. "They're working together." "What do we do now?" Mom asked, looking between us. I hadn't expected to be included in the strategic planning, but to my surprise, they all looked to me for an answer. "We give them exactly what they want," I said, "but not in the way they expect." For the next 3 weeks, we executed our plan with precision. I continued meeting with Lansing, feeding him carefully crafted information, some true, some misleading, all designed to create the impression that the Rodriguez family was fracturing under pressure. Meanwhile, Olivia worked with the company's lawyers to document Bradley's embezzlement, building an airtight case against him. Dad focused on his health, following his doctor's recommendations to the letter, showing improvement as the stress of secrecy lifted. And together, we worked on his memoirs, the real ones, not the sanitized version he'd originally planned. He dictated his stories with new clarity, acknowledging his mistakes alongside his triumphs, creating a true legacy document rather than corporate propaganda. By the time Lansing made his move, a hostile takeover attempt backed by the leverage of the company's debt, we were ready. The evidence of Bradley's financial crimes had been quietly submitted to the authorities. The company's most valuable assets had been legally secured through a complex series of maneuvers that Olivia and our lawyers had engineered. And most importantly, we had Lansing's own words on record, revealing his decades-long vendetta. The final confrontation happened not in a courtroom or boardroom, but in our family home. Lansing and Bradley arrived together, thinking they were there to negotiate the terms of our surrender. Instead, they found themselves facing a united family front and 2 federal agents who had been quietly waiting in the next room. "This isn't over," Lansing snarled as he was being led away. "You're still going down, Rodriguez. All of you." "Maybe," my father acknowledged, "but not by your hand." After they were gone, the 4 of us sat in stunned silence in the living room. The magnitude of what we'd just survived washing over us. "I still can't believe Bradley was working for Lansing all along," Olivia said quietly. "That our entire marriage was strategic." Mom moved to sit beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Not everything can be faked, sweetheart. Not for that long. It doesn't matter now, Olivia said, straightening her shoulders. What matters is rebuilding. Dad looked at me across the room, his expression more vulnerable than I'd ever seen it. I owe you an apology, Naomi. Many apologies. In fact, for shutting you out, for undervaluing your strengths, for trying to protect you in ways that hurt you. You don't have to— Yes, I do, he interrupted. What I said to you that day about handouts and contribution, it wasn't just about creating distance to protect you. It was my pride talking, my narrow vision of what success looks like. He shook his head. I was wrong. Coming from my father, those 3 words, I was wrong, were more valuable than any inheritance could have been. The company's still in trouble, Olivia pointed out, ever the practical one. We've stopped the bleeding, but we're a long way from recovery. Then we'll rebuild, Dad said. Together, all of us. He looked at me. If you want to be part of it. I thought about my life in Boston, my modest apartment, my publishing job. I'd built that life deliberately, separate from the family wealth and influence. But I realized, now that I'd been defining myself in opposition to my family rather than on my own terms, I'm not leaving my writing career, I said slowly. But yes, I want to be part of rebuilding, on equal footing. Of course, Dad agreed immediately. In fact, I was thinking the company could use a communications division. Publishing, marketing, narrative control, something that plays to your strengths. A seat at the table, Olivia added, a real one. 6 months later, Rodriguez's development was smaller but stable. Dad's health had plateaued with the right treatment and reduced stress. Olivia had filed for divorce and thrown herself into restructuring the company's core business. And I was splitting my time between Boston and Connecticut, building the new communications division while finishing Dad's memoirs. As for the family dynamics, we were still working on those. Old patterns don't change overnight, but we were trying, all of us, with a new understanding of what family loyalty really meant. It wasn't about blind allegiance or unquestioning sacrifice. It wasn't about measuring worth through contribution or conformity. It was about recognizing each person's unique value and creating space for them to bring their whole self to the table. The $8 million that had once seemed like such, a clear symbol of favoritism, now existed only on paper, a technical legal arrangement designed to protect the company, not a statement of our respective worth. The real inheritance, I'd come to understand, was the chance to be part of something larger than myself without losing my identity in the process. How's the ending coming? Dad asked one evening as I worked on the final chapter of his book in his study. Still figuring it out, I admitted. Endings are always the hardest part. He nodded thoughtfully. In business, maybe. But in family, there are no endings really, just new chapters. I smiled at the unexpectedly poetic sentiment from my usually pragmatic father. That's good. I might use that. Feel free, he said, rising from his desk with only a slight tremor in his movements. After all, these are our stories now. All of us together. As he left the room, I turned back to my laptop, typing the words that would conclude not just his memoir, but this chapter of our family's complicated, imperfect, but ultimately resilient story. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.